work with a human. And I said, hey, do you ever have an interest in selling your business? So it's about a 30% increase. If I did the right thing and I can sleep at night doing that. BC Solutions wouldn't be where it is today without BNI.
All right, hi. I'm Elaine Zambos, and I'm the Executive Director for BNI Southeast Tennessee. And today I am with Erika Moon, who is the CEO of BC Solutions. But when I met Erika 11 years ago in 2015 at the Uptown chapter, you weren't the CEO.
I was not.
So how did that happen?
Through working in the channels of the family business. I was vice president of the company, and the doldrums of COVID, the owner at the time said she would own the business maybe 5 or so more years and look to sell it. And I was kind of at a point where I was either ready for a career change or to take on a new responsibility. And it worked out that I was able to acquire and take over ownership of the company about 6 months after that conversation. And I'd been there for 8 years. I always said I did everything but had my name on the door. So now I've got my name on the door.
I love it. So wait a minute. You worked there 8 years. Okay, so Erika.
Yeah.
You have been in this business since college.
Right after. Yeah. I did summers in college. I'd go and work there and file and download credit card machines and do some not so fun things that I never wanted to be in this business. And then I was looking for a job after my first stint in the flooring industry, and thought it'd be a quick 6-month stepping stone. 2020 was 8 years in the industry, and so 6 years later, we're approaching 15 years in the business. And I don't know that I'll ever have another job at this point.
Well, why would you?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so wait. When you were in college and you were working in the credit card industry, did they still have those machines you went?
We added those as a supplement every time we did a credit card machine as a backup. So they would, and then they'd run those to the bank as a backup. We didn't have a mobile app we could log into then and run a secondary transaction. So, yeah.
So share with me some of the technology that has changed in the credit card industry since you started. That's
every terminal that was a card present solution had to be ran on a secondary phone line. So a lot of clients would use like a fax line and their credit card machine on that secondary line, because if it was on their main phone line and a call came in, it would disconnect that transaction from going through. We'd also unplug our fax line to plug it in to make that program get downloaded and have all your business information there. And then from there, we slowly added, about 2014, 2015, the ability to run on an internet connection, meaning hardwire the Ethernet cable into the back of the terminal. And I would get asked all the time, can I just run this on Wi-Fi? And at the time, security was a huge problem and unfortunately wasn't available. Today, we do have Wi-Fi driven things. We can connect to the cell phone tower now and run transactions. We do a lot of card not present things where they log into something on the computer and that functions as their card machine. And then everything to a full-blown point of sale that's tracking inventory and everything. So I've really seen the technology shift and change immensely since I started this.
And I think that as consumers, there's been a big shift in the way consumers spend than they did in 2015 to how they do now in 2026. Wait a minute. You started before 2015, though.
2012 was when I was full-time.
Okay, so from 2012 to 2026, there's been a shift also in how consumers spend, because back in 2012, we still carried a wad of cash in our pocket, and we only used the credit card if we didn't have enough cash in our pocket.
Yep.
So talk about how that has changed your industry as well.
Yeah, so over the last 15 years, you've seen a huge shift in plastic becoming the predominant method of payment. So much so it's over 60% now that is going on a credit or debit card. And even through the shift into the COVID pandemic times, we saw cash being removed out of our system through the germs and worried about that transfer. But the big shift really happened in 2015, and that's when we started putting the chip in our card. So we weren't just swiping our card anymore, we were physically inserting that card, and that really was a huge shift. And the reason being is the rules surrounding that is the card brands prefer that card stays in your hand. So in Europe, they call it chip and pin because you literally insert the card and have a PIN number associated with that, whether it's credit or debit. And so the way the American system is set up, that chip and pin really wasn't practical for all of our applications. So we don't require that as part of our card acceptance. But you saw that 2015, that big shift in the change of the card and how it was accepted. And then you go 5 more years. We see this big shift in our industry about every 5 years. And with 2020 and COVID, they did a lot of mobile technology then. And we really fleshed out using QR codes then as a way to scan and make a payment. So making that contactless, touchless, all of those things that the card stays in your hand, it's your card, you're not transferring that information,
right.
Was a huge change in all of that.
So there's so much to that piece of the business, like the credit card industry in itself. But as somebody that is just like the American dream, right, of starting their own business, owning their own business, there's so much that they have to think about. And then like, oh yeah, I got to take payment. What is something that you want to share as a piece of advice to somebody who's starting a business and they're going to, obviously, they have to, they're not going to be in business if they don't offer credit card transaction. So what advice do you give that person to say what they need to be thinking about with their business?
Find somebody to work with across all pieces of your business. Have a trusted resource in each of the facets that you need, whether that comes to your banking, your CPA, your merchant services, an advisor. Work with a human. We remove the human element out of a lot of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. And if you ever get in a sticky situation, the internet's not going to be able to help you too much. So if you've got a person that's advocating on your behalf and consulting with you from a merchant services perspective, and we're kind of considered brokers in a sense that we have a large technology suite, and so we can put you in something that's a really good fit right now as a startup, and then grow with your business over time and leverage that technology and make those changes. And if you don't have a person to consult upon, you may sign up for something or get into something that's too expensive or isn't a good fit long term, and now you're kind of stuck and you've spent what available funds you did have on something that you're kind of having to piecemeal and put together and make work in a way that really didn't make the best sense for you. So having that consultant in your corner is really powerful.
Well, and you say to work with a human, right?
Yeah.
And so, but when we think about credit card transactions, people are buying things on Amazon and they're doing all the different things, right? And they're just entering their card in, so they don't think about a person is behind that credit card transaction. Yeah. I'm going to make it personal for a second. Back in the summer of 2017, I had the opportunity to purchase the BNI Southeast region, right? The BNI Southeast Tennessee region. And one of the things that I knew I had to do, because they gave me a list of to-dos, right? And on that list of to-dos was to come up with merchant services. And thank goodness I knew you. And so I didn't even have to think about it. I just handed you the sheet of paper and said, this is what I need, can you do it? And you're like, you don't even have to think about it, Elaine, I got you. And so, but a lot of people don't have an Erika.
Sure.
So how do we find you?
Well, referral opportunities are always the best. So whether you've got an Erika in your area and you can make that introduction, or somebody, maybe your banker or your CPA, those are trusted resources in your sphere that you want to get situated with pretty early on, as well as a bookkeeper. You know, they're handling your finances. So if you've got a trusted person in one of those industries, a lot of times they've got a referral source that they know, like, and trust and can work with to make an introduction like that. So that's a great way to find that human element and find somebody like myself. You know, obviously you could go out there and look me up online with BC Solutions and payingyourway.com. I'd love the opportunity to work with them, but it also needs to be the right fit. And if you've got a personal introduction to a merchant services person that's a trusted advisor, it's always my recommendation.
Sure. So on to that, we're talking about the referral, right? So for you, you're working in the business. All of a sudden now you're like, wait a minute, this is my business. Who did you seek out? Like, what were the types of referral sources that you were looking for to help you grow the business?
Yeah, I've done a lot of work with commercial lenders and commercial bankers because they're looking at the full financial picture, whether that's a startup or they're wanting to grow their business. They're typically looking to leverage some finances at that time. It's a good opportunity to see, is there a chance that they need to save some money, or they need to be spending a little bit more because their payment acceptance isn't exactly what they need. So definitely a commercial lender in the banking space is a huge source for me, and a CPA as well. We see a lot of uptick around tax season and changes shifting where they've seen what they've processed in the last year, what that's cost them, and it's kind of a good financial overview in the business world. And then, you see some out of the box things that you wouldn't think of. My greatest referral opportunity that ever came trickled through an AFLAC agent. So you just really never know what that in turn is going to look like.
You had shared that with me, that an AFLAC agent had shared with you some information, and that turned out to be like one of the biggest referrals. Can you share a little bit more about that story? Don't leave us hanging.
Yeah, so an AFLAC agent had reached out to me. They had a client that wasn't happy with their merchant services vendor, asked if I could come in and take a look at the business, and I was able to secure that business. They were doing promotional products, and over time I got to know this merchant really well and become pretty good friends with them and purchase some swag for my business and that sort of thing. And I said to her, I asked if there was a family name that was a competitor of mine in the Chattanooga area. And she said, yeah, have you ever met him? And I said, no. Could you share his contact information? And she said, sure. And I wasn't really sure what would come of it, but I asked him to have coffee. And that turned into a conversation about just business and camaraderie and some of the things that we experience in the merchant services world. And I said, hey, do you ever have an interest in selling your business? Wasn't sure I could afford it. I had owned BC Solutions for about, 6-8 months at that point. I wasn't really sure exactly what I was doing from an ownership perspective. And he said, I don't know, maybe in 5 years. 6 months later, he called and we were able to secure the deal. And I got 6 agent banks with that across the Southeast, which means that they referred to our company exclusively for their commercial banking products. So we got all the merchant services out of that, and which also came with a nice existing portfolio and a 35-year sales veteran in the industry. So it was a really amazing acquisition that just from an AFLAC introduction to earn one singular business, I was able to buy a whole offshoot business and expand it.
I love that. That's one of the things that BNI offers us is the opportunity to meet people that we would have no idea that we would meet. Who would think that this gentleman who is selling cancer insurance or, accident insurance, that he could lead to the biggest referral for you? So
I don't even know if he knows he made that introduction long term. He was in another chapter. We had crossed paths at several networking things around the community, and he's no longer in the AFLAC industry.
No, he's in promotional products.
That's funny. Okay.
He works. I know Josh. I know Josh. He's in my phone. I know him and his wife very well. I'm going to call them and say, hey, this is what you did for Erika.
Yeah.
So you buy this business. Now it's 12 months. It took 6 months and then another 6 months. So 12 months. So how much did that increase the size of your business? Like, did it increase it 25%, 10%?
It was about a 30% increase. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a really cool acquisition, and the pieces to that are extremely valuable 4 years later to my day to day. I couldn't function without them. So There was a learning curve because it wasn't
Right.
exactly the way I had been used to functioning. It was a totally new platform that we had to learn and work through. I always said I knew how to do the job. I just didn't know the nuances of that one in particular, but it was a great long-term
And you got
investment.
Cheryl.
Yeah.
Yeah, 35-year veteran in the business.
She's never had any other job besides working in the merchant services business. So huge value to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So share with me a particular client that, because, nobody wakes up, let me just back this up a minute. Nobody wakes up today and goes, you know what? I hope I have to replace my credit card system and I hope I have to hand over all my financials for the last 6 months or so. And I hope that somebody's just going to go through every penny I've earned and tell me that I got to do something different because, for whatever reason, it's blown up and I have got to make a change. Share with me how you've been able to help somebody like that.
Yeah, it's when you paint it like that, it sounds really painful and kind of
Well, I know it is.
intrusive.
It is. I used to. So I had this non-compete time in my life when I lost a job, right? And I worked in a transmission shop, and I cannot tell you how many times merchant service people would come in and want to sell us that on them, like, oh, you need to use my company because we have better rates, we got better equipment, we got better. And then you would sit down and then they'd want you to open up the file cabinet and go, all right, I need to see all your bank statements. I need to see all your credit card transactions. I'm like, oh my word, like it's intrusive.
Yep.
It's
I
not
always
fun.
joke to say the only thing I don't need is your blood type. So
Yeah.
However, think about the automotive industry for just a second. You bring that up. Without a car or a mode of transportation, we can't get anywhere as Americans. We don't have the means of public transportation system. So that is one of the resources that it doesn't matter what it's going to cost or how it's going to take to get me there. I'm giving you money to get that repair done on my vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So from merchant services salespeople, that they know is typically a higher volume account. There's more margin available in that account. It's very profitable for them. And it's an easy target because you are right there on a main thoroughfare street in Chattanooga. And so it was very easy to drip and poke on that. But I like to think outside the box a little bit when I'm working with my businesses. Sure, I have those standard retail outfits and operations and things, but some of the things that we like to work on that are different for us is a manufacturing style business. Those corrugated metal buildings with no signage, a little scary to go in and find somebody working behind the desk, and then there's usually a wall of some kind, and then the operations are behind that. But those people haven't been called upon. They haven't been tortured to death. They haven't been asked for their firstborn child and all their financial documents. They're a little more receptive to work with you, and you can make a big impact in that style of business. So I really like working with them. But you asked specifically about the documentation process. So you go through a traditional underwriting process when you work with a traditional merchant processor like what we offer. And why is that an advantage to you? Because you're not just lumped in, automatically approved and said, yep, Elaine, you can run as much volume as you want to based in this area. And oh, by the way, if you don't run transactions in the way that we like you to, we're going to hold your funds, we're going to put a stop on it, and we're going to come back and ask you for all those documents. So that seems a little scarier, right? Because now you need your firstborn child and all that documents, and oh, by the way, you're not getting paid.
Right.
So working with
you're not going to feed that baby.
No. So working with somebody that has experience in this industry that can tell you, hey, here's what I need. I may come back and ask you for some more documentation, but wouldn't you want to do this on the front end and not have to go through the headache on the back end, so that if there is a large spike in volume or something that does go awry, we're not holding money, you're not missing payroll, your employees aren't missing out on feeding their families or making that rent payment or paying health insurance or anything like that. So something that I have to ask for right now has a ripple effect down the line that impacts a lot of people. So it seems invasive up front potentially. And depending on the size of the account and how they're transacting, we don't always have to have all that information.
Well, but I also think too that you've got to build, like, a lot of trust with that person before they're going to give you all of that information.
Absolutely.
And so there's and there might be a lot of layers of people that you've got to get to, because you're in the business to business world. Like you're calling strictly on businesses. Erika, we were talking earlier off camera about just the culture of the merchant service world, and we were talking about like there's so, like you were saying earlier, like I was on a very busy street. I'm in a business that has high volume, and I'm in a business that has a lot of a margin, and so I'm a real target for somebody to come in and like constantly try to be selling me. So in your perfect world, it's a perfect world, what is that called? How would you like to see all of the other merchant service companies? And I know they can't all be like Erika, so that's not the answer.
I wish there was a little bit stricter vetting process, to be quite honest with you. There is a certification similar to like a CPA license that merchant services people can get. And I wish that was more of a requirement because realistically, I have seen in my industry, I mean, somebody's got to get started
right.
in everything, right? But going through more of a strict examination process of some time, bankers go to banking school, right? So that's that level of certification that comes along with that. CPA licensing happens. So just kind of fine tuning it a little bit more into the professional world, and not just allowing any fly-by-night person looking to make a buck in. They might dabble in it, they might transfer companies, they might move your account. I mean, I've seen it all, as you can imagine, but just some tighter parameters around the expectations and the guidelines. We're handling people's money. The reason they're in business in the first place in a lot of ways, whether that's a nonprofit looking for donations or, looking to be a successful transmission shop. They're in business to make money and do something with those funds.
Right. So, because we're talking about culture there.
Yeah.
And so, Erika, I had the privilege of becoming the executive director, right, for BNI Southeast Tennessee, and you were one of the first people that I reached out to not only get things set up on the back end, but to be on my team, because I knew I couldn't do this by myself. So we've had some history with some culture changes within BNI, and we spent some time in Dallas, I believe it was. We were at a conference together. And so as you look back from your experience in 2015 to today, what's been the biggest shift you have seen in the BNI community, and how the BNI community has fed into the culture shift with BC Solutions?
Yeah. BC Solutions wouldn't be where it is today without BNI. The original owner and founder was a member of a legacy chapter that's been rebranded and renamed today. Now it's called the Edge chapter, but I work with some of the people that are still in that chapter. We started in '98, and so some of those people are still clients. But when I took over ownership, one of the things that I really had to do is strip it all back and say, at the end of the day, what are we in business to do, and how are we going to do it? Because for me as a person, I really fret over things if it's not done right and done ethically, and I like to be able to put my head on the pillow at night and say, you know what, I might not have made the most money I could have done in that situation, but I did the right thing, and I can sleep at night doing that. I can promise you there are situations that have arisen that I've had that's taken a little bit more time to fix or work through. I don't sleep on those nights. It really does affect me personally, because I want to do the right thing for my clients. And so I had to make sure that we were working with the right company in the back end to move the monies around, transacting. I had to make sure we were partnered with the right technology partners that were servicing our clients to the level that we expected. And I had to make sure that I, as a business owner, had made introductions and were working with people as relationships to help position BC Solutions grow and flourish. And almost all the people that I had partnered with My banker was a BNI introduction from my chapter when I first got started, through the lending process as well. I became really good friends with some of my competitors in this community because of those BNI relationships. It almost pulls back the layers, and when you're a mutual BNI member, and it levels the playing field a little bit to say, look, we're going to play in each other's sandbox. We can share the shovels and the buckets together, and we can do the right thing here, because the accountability and the culture that you and BNI and Southeast Tennessee have created levels that playing field for everybody to understand that, hey, we need to play nice together. And if your client's running into a problem, I want a phone call, and vice versa. And that's truly happened.
Well, and I can't help but share that one of the best referrals you've ever received in BNI, in my opinion, is the introduction to your husband, Trey.
Yeah.
And now we have little Ellie, and we have a second baby. So we're going to have a second generation of BNI members. So tell me, how is being a business owner, the CEO of this amazingly successful company, as a new mom?
Whew, that was a challenge. You know, it was easier early on. Eat, sleep, poop, repeat. I could time my schedule a lot easier. Now that Ely is 17 months old and she's mobile and one nap a day and 3+ meals a day, I got to be really diligent with my time blocking and shutting myself in my office or removing myself. Your priorities shift, and it's not that my family is more important or that my business is more important. I have to find the happy balance to do both, because you feel guilty if one doesn't get the amount of attention that the other does. And with a second baby on the way, that I probably am learning that even balance early to then be able to apply it to both the children. But you have to surround yourself again with great people that can help you. My family, Trey's and both of my families are in town, so they're extremely helpful and have been. But yeah, I think we all have the same amount of time every single day. There are plenty of nights and weekends where I do something for the business that unfortunately needed to get done. And kind of back to one of my points I made earlier is I'm dealing with their money. So if I don't jump when they need me to jump, I am not valuable to them. And so you have to play that into saying, yes, I can do that, and then establishing those really clear boundaries that not everybody's a fit for a client. You cannot, I'm a big, if I say yes, I will do it person, and I've learned that I either need to leverage my team, leverage utilizing our network that we've got in place, and then there are times you've got to just say no.
Yeah. Well, there's two things to unpack there that I think are very impactful. And you said, like, BC Solutions isn't for everyone. It may not be for that person. I say that about BNI a lot. BNI is not for everyone. It may not be for you, and that's okay, right? Like, knowing what is best for the person involved. And then, you know, when you said I'm a yes person, I have learned a very valuable lesson about being a yes person is that when I say yes to something, I'm visually looking at what I have to say no to say yes. And that has really helped. And I think you were leading to that to say, yeah, this is what I have to do now, because, you know, life is different as a new mom and running a successful business. And I don't see you putting the brakes on the business. I only see you continuing to grow BC Solutions to be even bigger. So as we wrap this up, Erika, what is something that I can do for you to help you, other than change a diaper?
Something you can do for me is just keep the business at top of mind if you're speaking to somebody who is having any type of issue with their finances. If you hear them mention a problem within their financial landscape, and I'm not talking about they can't pay the bills, because typically that's pretty personal and you don't hear that information. But if there's any type of financial conversation going on, a growth conversation, that oftentimes is a great segue into us coming in and looking at their systems in place. So if you've got somebody you're working with and speaking with that might be coming into BNI, wanting to grow their business through a networking organization is oftentimes a lot of great opportunity for us to talk to them.
All right, Erika, thank you so much for being here. I know you could have been a lot of places, but you chose to be here, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Absolutely.